What's going on, everybody? Sean Pierce Johnson here, and we are checking out the brand new Waza amp from Boss and their Waza Craft line of effects and now amplifiers. Waza Craft. So what's the deal there? Well, by now you all should know that Waza Craft is kind of Boss's premium line, if you will. Basically what they do is they let their engineers have a field day trying to take their current designs and push them to boundaries that they've never been taken to before. We've taken a look at some of those pedals already, and they are unbelievable. So the only natural progression would be to go to the amplifier realm. And what we have here is an absolute beast of an amplifier. Don't believe me? Let's take a look at it. This thing is 150 watts of rip-roaring glory that you can scale down to 150 or 1 watt. Right now we have it in the 100 watt mode because those extra 50 watts are just filling this space to the point that I don't even know if I want to be in the same room as the amplifier, but in a good way. You have 4 channels on this amplifier, each with their own independent gain and volume control, and each pair of channels share a 3-band EQ of bass, middle, and treble, and a presence control, as well as a reverb level. Really cool. It has 2 effects loops in it. 2 that you can switch to series or parallel. There is a DI out where you can adjust whether or not you want a close mic sound, a distant mic sound, or a blend of the 2. And not to mention, there's a resonance adjustment, 3 different positions: deep, modern, and vintage. Right now what you heard at the top of the video was the deep setting. And as if that weren't enough, you can hook it up to a computer via USB. So I don't know exactly what you would do there. Maybe you get some direct recording out. I think that's what you get out of it. But this amp, its character can be changed. And how does it do that? See these 2 glowing blue lights right behind these little metal grates right here? That's where the tone capsules live. They're little vacuum tube-like thingies that you place into this little compartment here on the front of the amplifier, and it changes the overall character of the amplifier, the way it behaves. This amp uses the same kind of technology that went into the Blues Cube amplifier. So it's not just a straight model of the overall sound of the amplifier. It's how does the guitar distort the front end? How does that first preamp stage go into the next preamp stage? How does that drive the EQ section of the amplifier? How does that overall affect the reverb? How does that affect the power stage? These amps, 4 solid state amps, feel really, really nice under the fingers. Now when you buy this amp, it comes with the Waza Brown Sound tone capsule. Yes, Brown Sound. Yes, Van Halen. Who wouldn't want to get those tones? They're amazing. But the hallmark of the tone capsule line, for me, is the Steve Vai tone capsule that is compatible with the Waza amp. I have both the Brown Sound and the Steve Vai plugged in right now, but in this video we're going to take a look at the stock Waza amp sound. Now periodically throughout this video you're going to hear the audio change slightly. Right now I have the cabinet, which is a 412 with Roland design speakers, mic'd up with a Shure SM57 and a Cascade Fathead ribbon microphone, my 2 go-to guitar recording mics. But we're also taking the close mic feed of the line out. So periodically throughout this video you'll hear the audio shift, going from those mic'd up cab signal to the direct out. So let's take a look at some of the sounds that we can conjure up with this beast. Alright, so let's check out all the sounds that are available for us. Now for this portion of the demo, we're going to stick with the internal sound of the Waza amp. So what's that based on? Well, think British, think EL34. You know, the kind of amps that Page and Clapton and Hendrix used, you know, back in the good old days. I think you guys know where I'm going with this. So, can that get us a good clean sound? Well, let's find out. Now, I will say, before we get started playing, I love it when amplifiers have a clean channel with its own independent gain knob. I find that that feature alone really lends itself to a bunch of different great clean sounds. You get a little bit of grit when you dig in on certain settings, but it kind of lends a nice faux compression to the sound that works really well for strumming. So let's check that out. Right now in my settings, I have the gain at 12 o'clock and the volume is about 2 o'clock. And we've got our master somewhere around 9. That I get when I really smack the strings, and each string, even on the higher strings, sounds fat and warm. Really, really nice. But let's check out just some regular strumming and see what we can get out of that. I gotta say, I'm really blown away by how dynamic this is. Lightly easing up on your strength that you're hitting the strings with gives you a little bit more of a clearer sound. But we can also achieve that same result by dialing the gain knob back. So I'm gonna do that, go back to about 10 o'clock, and I find that these kind of settings lend itself really well to arpeggiated patterns. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on a delay from the Boss DD500, and let's see what we get with that. Even on the lower gain setting, I really feel like this amp produces a really warm, clean sound, and that is something that not many solid-state amps can do. Another thing that solid-state amps can't really do, take pedals well. I mean, some do it better than others, but usually their really sterile, clean sounds leave a lot to be desired. So let's see what we can do. I'm gonna go back to that beefier clean tone that I started out with, and I got a Wazacraft Blues driver on the floor. We're gonna play around a little bit with that and see if this amp can handle it. internal sound, the crunch channel is where all you AC/DC devotees are gonna live. It really captures that big 100-watt full stack pushed to the absolute brink. You just have to hear it to believe. I think you guys know what I mean, but that doesn't mean that you can't take a lead with it. See, there's plenty of gain on tap, and that is only halfway up on the gain knob. You are more than welcome to crank it and see where you can get with it. A little bit saggy, that compression is just really starting to come in. Really, really cool vintage style sound from a solid state amp, no less. So I thought it would be a good idea to show you guys the crunch channel with a guitar that has lower output, more traditional style sounding pickups. Now I've got my Ramos here, and this has some PAF style humbuckers in it, more closely associated with the classic Gibson style rather than the hotter output Seymour Duncans on my Les Paul. Now this is the same sound that I was using to cop the Malcolm tone, and you can hear the difference. Now with the lower output pickups, you actually get a lot of that clarity back that you don't get with the hotter pickups. But if you want more of the saturation, you can go ahead and bump up the gain and you can get that back. But even with that extra saturation, we still get that great clarity from the PAF style pickups. Really amazing how well this amp can handle multiple different guitar styles. All right, now we're getting into high gain territory with the Waza amp. Lead 1, lead 2. Lead 1 is gonna be your hot rodded Marshall kind of sound. Oops, sorry, I said Marshall. Like, we care. Jeez. Legalities of these things is crazy. Anyway, this is your hot rodded British amp sound. Basically, think Van Halen 1, think Randy Rhoads, think hair metal, that kind of stuff. But it's a little bit, compared to lead 2, it's a more aggressive sound. The mid-range is a little bit barkier. It certainly cuts a little bit better than lead 2, whereas lead 2 is gonna be your modern kind of distortion. So let's check those sounds out. Right now I have my favorite setting on lead 1, and I like to add in a fair amount of treble but keep the presence kind of flat. I have the bass pushed a little bit and the mids right in the middle. We can go with the gain a little higher. I'll go ahead and push that to about 3 o'clock. And this is what we have. Let's see if we can make that sound a little bit more modern by scooping out some of those mids and boosting the bass. Yeah, you can really do a lot with this EQ. Maybe taking out a little bit of treble, but adding in some presence. I said, lead 2 is going to be more of your modern sound, so it lives a little bit more in my school. I love modern EL34 amps. I play an Orange after all, has the EL34s in it, and that's kind of home for me. So when I use lead 2, that's really where I try to get the closest approximation to what I try for with my band and the music that I make. So for this, I typically like to run the gain in and around 2, 3 o'clock with the volume just under noon. Fair amount of bass, but I keep that middle in there. I don't actually boost the bass too much. And then I like to have a little bit more treble and less presence. I find that the presence on this is just giving a little bit too much sheen for my liking, but having a little bit in there really helps, you know, the articulation. This is modern. And maybe even dial back some of that bass so we're not, you know, going womp womp. Now that we've taken a look at some of the sounds that you can get with the Waza amp using the internal sound, let's take a look at some of the finer controls that you can use to change up your tone. You have the 4-position power control, which allows you to switch between 150 down all the way to 1 watt. And then you have the cabinet resonance, 3 positions for deep, modern, and vintage. And then the line out recording feel, which is record, live, and blend. And I'll get into that explanation in a little bit. So let's just quickly run through how these power controls feel. It's going to be loud in this room. It's probably going to be loud through the speakers. So if you need to turn down a little bit, you might want to. And I really hope I don't distort the mic pre's on this. was 50 watt, and for me, I like the 50 watt setting. It's not too quiet, it's not too loud, it's just right. It's the Goldilocks setting. Perfect for this household. So now let's check out the cabinet resonance. I'll go back to the 100 watt for the rest of this. There's 3 positions: deep, modern, and vintage. And basically what resonance is doing is it's shaping the low end handling of the cabinet. Now what you've been hearing throughout this entire video has been the deep setting. And I feel like for me and the style of music that I tend to play, that works the best. Modern is definitely good and one of my 2 favorites of the 3. The only thing is I don't feel like it has quite the oomph that I'm looking for. But if I were playing in a band, with this amp, this would probably be the setting that I'd go for. It takes away some of those punchy sub-bass frequencies for the guitar that would definitely get lost in the mix. Now with vintage, I don't really have much of a description for this one. You kind of just have to hear it. Now, I don't particularly like this one as much as I like the other 2. The low end just really isn't that tightness that I need for the kind of music that I write and the kind of music that I play. But I do feel like it would be useful, and it's great to have the option in the studio. But like I said, deep has been what you're hearing, so we're gonna stick with the deep. Now the line out. Now for this portion, you're not going to be hearing any of the guitar mics. You're just getting the DI out of the Waza amp. And I'll just go ahead and play a D chord and flick through the 3 different settings. We'll start with record, go to live, and then blend. And then we'll back up to live and then back to record. I couldn't hear it in the room because I'm not monitoring, but I hope you heard a difference, and I'm sure in post-production I'll hear a difference. But anyway, I hope that gave you guys a good idea of what these switches on the front of the amp do, aside from the knobs that you can use to set your sound. Well, there you have it, everybody. There is your look at the internal sounds on the brand new Boss Wazacraft amplifier. I'm really pleased with the way that this sounds. I think that the Wazacraft line has done wonders for Boss and really allowed their engineers to delve deeply into what makes great tone. I've loved all the pedals that I've gotten a chance to try, and this is definitely a welcome addition to the line. The price point is a little high. The head alone is hovering in and around $2,300, so you might feel a little apprehensive as to buying a $2,300 amplifier, but hey, just the internal sound alone is great. And also that comes with the Brown Sound tone capsule. But you didn't hear the Brown Sound tone capsule, did you now? So stay tuned for part 2 of the demo of the Boss Waza amp. And until next time, I'm Sean Pierce Johnson, and I wish you good tone and happy stomping. Cheers, everybody.